Good morning, everyone. It's been a few days since I've been able to record one of these, but I got my Starbucks. I'm actually sitting because talking about epidurals takes a lot of concentration. So today we're talking about epidurals, and if you haven't been following along, I am going over each line of my birth decisions plan that I make with my clients and explaining what those choices are. And today we're talking about epidurals, and you can find the rest in my TV. So, epidurals. Why is everybody so anti, supposedly? Why do they get the bad rap? So let's talk about it sort of from the beginning. When you get an epidural, you have to get a catheter and an IV. And so from the top, those things kind of start to restrict your movement. You are going to be hooked up the entire time. If you were unmedicated, you would be able to remove your IV or not have one at all and be able to move around a little bit more freely, which kind of moves on to if you do have an epidural, you can't move your legs. So there are some moms that are still able to sort of move their legs side to side or sort of switch sides, on their side from left or right. But mostly, for the most part, you're not going to be moving around. You're going to be on your bed. So why is that a bad thing? It's a bad thing because your body really speaks to you while you're in labor. It speaks to you to get up, to do this weird bounce, to go in the shower, by the feelings that you're feeling through your contractions. If your contractions don't feel right, oftentimes it's because your baby's in a wrong position and you need to change positions. So if you're not able to feel that because you have an epidural, that could make your labor longer. And the other thing to think about is when you do get an epidural, sometimes your contractions slow down. They slow down. Why? Because you're not moving. You're kind of stuck in your bed, and the body just tends to sort of shut down a little bit. It doesn't always happen. But I have seen it definitely happen. And so once your contractions slow down, they give you Pitocin. And Pitocin is a mimic of oxytocin, which is our body's love hormone. It's our labor hormone. And the thing with our own oxytocin is that it goes into our brain. Pitocin is only in our blood. But being that it mimics contractions, it's going to make your contractions harder, and that's why you sometimes have to get more of an epidural, or the baby starts to be affected by the Pitocin because, the contractions aren't the natural rhythm that your body would make them. They're now being sort of taken over by this drug Pitocin, and that can make your contractions harder on the baby, and this affects the baby's heartbeat. So you can kind of see we're starting to create this circle, and you might see it called I can't even think of what it's called right now. Yes, the cascade of interventions. And this cascade happens when you choose to get an epidural, and then the things kind of fall like dominoes afterwards. Now, why do we want the baby to not be in distress from having, a little bit of unnatural contractions happening, harder contractions happening? Well, obviously the baby goes into distress, then their heartbeat changes, and then oftentimes this will lead to a C-section. So, there's good and bad of epidural. I would say if you are choosing to get an epidural, or if you have it in your birth plan, good for you. I am past the point of being a doula who is like, no epidurals. And honestly, in my last birth was so hard, and it was a home birth. I very much, when I was around 8 centimeters, could understand why a woman would want an epidural. With my first birth, it was not easier, but more manageable. And this birth was tough. But it's 5 hours, and then it was over, and I was on with my life. But I understand why women get them. And here's my thing. If you're going to get an epidural, I want you to try to stay at home as long as possible. I want you to, when you feel like you can't go on, give yourself 1 more hour, 45 more minutes, just push yourself a little bit longer. And more than likely you are in transition, and you just need to get over that hump, and then you're going to be flying, and the baby's going to be out soon. So stay at home as long as possible, laboring home as long as possible, so that you can get your body to dilate and in its most comfortable setting. Okay, and then number 2 is give yourself 45 more minutes to an hour after you think you can't go on. You know, get a big hug from your partner, put on your favorite song, put on your essential oils, and just hang in there a little bit longer, and you might just make it to the end. And number 3 is if you do end up getting an epidural, you have to have zero shame going in. You have to know, I did everything I could, or this was my choice, and here we go. The thing is, if you don't, you're going to create in your body possibly shame and a feeling that was going to shut your body down, and you're going to stop dilating. So we want to think, we still want to be free, we still want to be engaged, we still want to be excited for our birth, we still want to feel safe, all the things that make birth successful. We still want those things to happen, and just because you get an epidural, it doesn't mean you're a bad mommy, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, none of that, okay? So if you do choose to, still go in there with a positive poly attitude and knowing that, you know, this is your choice. And then on the flip side, once you do get an epidural, the things that can happen afterwards are something to think about. So a lot of women get headaches, or back pain that happens. You know, some people are allergic to the anesthesia. So there's some after pain sort of things that you need to think about too. And there's also, you know, postpartum wise, just thinking if you do not get an epidural, you can literally be up and feeling great, you know, within like an hour. Whereas if you get an epidural, you have to wait for the effects to wear off. And, you know, I just heard from a lot of mommies who've had, like, they had an epidural for their first birth, and then their second came so fast that they didn't have time, that they were just shocked at how well they felt so soon after their birth. So anyways, if you have any questions, DM me. Also, evidence-based birth that I'm always talking about, evidencebasedbirth.com. They have a really great section on epidurals, and you know, it's a choice, and there are good things about it and there are bad things, as most things in life. So anyways, I hope you guys are doing great. I miss going to birth. I could almost start crying. Anyways, talk soon.